We continue the Shir in Navi. We are still listing the miracles performed by Elisha Hanavi after the Istalkus of Eliyahu Navi. The last miracle we started to discuss was the case of Naaman, the general of Aharon, who was very much liked by the king of Aharon. He was his favorite. Naaman was the person, remember, who had killed Achav. He was a hero in Aharon, and he had everything that any person could desire, power, wealth, and so on, but he was afflicted with a fatal case of leprosy. He would have given up, except that he had now a young girl, a Jewish girl that was taken captive from the Jews, worked for him as a maid, and she revealed to him the existence of a Navi, a prophet, with such miracle powers that even the dead can be brought back to life. To cure a case of leprosy is tantamount, equivalent to bringing back a dead person to life, similar to Tchias HaMesim. And by performing this act, Elisha would finally display the Tishnayim, double powers that he inherited from Eliyahu Navi. To show this double power meant that Eliyahu Navi had brought back to life one person from the dead. Elisha Navi had brought back one child. By curing Naaman, he would now have two to his credit. As we said, Naaman was sent by the king of Aharon to the Jews with a note sent first to the king of the Jews, saying, "I'm sending Naaman to you, and see that you cure him from his leprosy." The king cried out in terror, he tore his clothes in anguish, and said that this is a trick on the part of the king of Aharon, demanding me to cure one from leprosy. This is only a ruse in order to attack. He's looking for an excuse, and this is it. Elisha Hanavi sent a message to the king of the Jews telling him that, why do you tear your clothes? Let Naaman come to me and let him know that there is a prophet among the Jews. I will not do it for your sake, because you don't deserve it. You was an idol worshiper. I'll do it for the sake of the honor of Hashem. Let the covet of Hashem be known amongst the nations of the world. So Naaman headed directly for the house of Elisha Hanavi. When he came there, he was kept waiting outside. He was not admitted inside. He was amazed, at least to be given an audience to explain his case to this prophet, this holy prophet. Instead of being admitted inside, Elisha Levi sent a messenger out to him and said to him, "You have leprosy, you want to be cured. These are your instructions. Go, bathe, dip yourself 7 times in the waters of the Yarden, the Jordan River, and your flesh will return to normal. You become completely pure and healed." That was the extent of the message. Naaman heard this. He went into a wild rage, and he started to leave. He cried out in anger. Here I thought I'd come here, I'd see something real dramatic. He would, the prophet would come out, stand before me, and he'd stand and loudly cry out to Hashem in tefillah. And then he would raise his hand like a magic wand over my leprosy, and he would make the leprosy disappear. He'd show a miracle being performed. Instead, he says to me, "Go bathe 7 times in the dirty waters of the Yarden," those dirty Jordanian waters. If it's a question of bathing in the water, we have the spiced rivers of Damascus. special perfumed waters that are cures for so many diseases. Aren't they better than all the waters found in Israel? If to bathe, I could bathe and never become pure. So he turned away very angrily and started to leave. Servants came close, servants approached him, and they said to him, why don't you be patient about this? Why don't you study the statement you just received? What Elisha Navi sent to you was a very important message. The message is obvious. He told you to do something which is so commonplace that people have been doing it for years, for centuries. Something which we know definitely, without a shadow of doubt, is worthless as far as therapeutic value. The waters of the Jordan can cure nothing. But he said it, showed that he is proving to you a true value of a miracle in the true sense. Miracle means the power of a prophet to perform something from practically nothing, to do the impossible. Now, your duty is to accept with faith the greatness of the Navi, greatness of this prophet. Why don't you try it and see? Have a little faith and perform the act that Elisha Navi told you to do. What can you lose? That's the point. So Naaman realized that he was wrong, because after all he hadn't even tested the words of Elisha Navi. He felt a little ashamed. And so he went with trepidation, anxiety and fear to the waters of the Yarden. He dipped himself once, twice, 3 times. He looked at his arms, looked at his skin. It was snow white. Leprosy means the skin turns white as snow and flaky, begins to flake off. There was no change at all. There was no gradual improvement. It didn't begin to turn a darker shade. The 4th, 5th, 6th time, it was still exactly as before. Not one iota of a shade darker. The same snow white flaky skin. 7th time, he went down with his last hope. But he felt that what was necessary now was this faith. He went down for the 7th time. And of course the 7 in general, he's told to bathe 7 times, because 7 stands for the source of cures. Source of cure, the 7 spheros, Maisa, that affect, especially in Malchus, 7 sphera from which comes forth all the shefa, all that is good, all that is curative, all that is blessed. He went down for the 7th time. He came up, looked at his skin, and he cried out in joy, because it was as though he had never contacted leprosy at all. He was completely cured. He was so elated, so jubilant, that he rode back quickly to Elisha Navi, and there he begged, he went inside to see him now, he begged him to please take the gift he had brought, a whole caravan full of expensive cloths, materials, silver, coins of all kinds. Elisha Navi told him that he refused absolutely. He would not take any type of pay for this. It was enough that he had witnessed a miracle done by a prophet of the Jews. And he told him, give credit where it is due. See now the fact that you were there, all your idols, they did not help you at all. You see where the true power is. Naaman replied, yes. And let me if I cannot give you something, allow me to take something from you. Allow me to take a pair of mules loaded with the soil of Israel. I want that earth, take it back with me, and there to build from this earth an Aharon, build a mizbeach, an altar. And henceforth, when I offer sacrifices, it will be to Hashem only, to show that my faith is pure in Hashem. Navi was now called a ger. In this sense he was a converted at least as far as turning away from idol worship to belief in Hashem. Which means a ger teshov. Now, at the same time, a very strange request was made by Naaman too. The Gemara speaks about this request because there are certain laws that we can derive from this. Naaman said to Elisha Hanavi, once a person converts, becomes a Jew, he is obligated to believe fully. It's no longer a matter of privilege, of option. It is compulsory. A Jew who goes to visit an idol, takes part in idol worship, has no excuse for his action. In this case, Naaman said, I want permission to be excused. When the time comes, he said, when he has to go into the place of idol worship, because since he is the close associate, the close aide of the king of Aharon, the king uses him to lean on as a sign of his favorite subordinate. The king leans on him as he enters into this place of idol worship, and as he leans down, he'd force Naaman to bow down to with him. So he said, that's one thing I asked to be forgiven for. I go there, he said, you know that my heart will be only belief in Hashem. But physically, it would be required of me to bow to the idols too, since being with the king there's no way out. And Elisha Navi answered, yes, you may go. You cannot say this to a Jew. It's impossible to tell a Jew that no matter what reason it is to go into a place of idol worship, to bow, even if in your mind you have something else, some other intentions, some other motive. It is forbidden for a Jew to bow at all. Recall the story of Hannah and her 7 sons. The king asked the youngest son not even to bow to the statue, just to pretend he's bowing, but actually to go bend down and pick up his ring from the floor. And his son said, better to die than to have someone else think of bowing to a statue. What is that called? That's called Kiddush Hashem. To sacrifice one's life, even for what might be misconstrued as idol worship. The Gemara says, we see here that a goy, or even a ger teshuv, is excused from this rule of sacrificing his life, giving his life for the sake of Kiddush Hashem. They're not included in that law. With this, Naaman left a very happy frame of mind. He felt badly only about the fact that he was a big sport. He would like to have shown his gratitude materially. But Elisha Navi had rebuked him. He refused to accept anything at all. No gift of any size whatsoever. So he started to leave slowly. He rode off with his servants, caravan following behind him. He rode off into the distance. And Elisha Navi's student and servant Gehazi, who was his Mishamesh Bakodesh. He was his closest servant, served him constantly, now felt that a mistake had been made by his master. He would have a chance to get such wealth, to turn it down. What harm can it do to accept it? So Gehazi thought to himself, Elisha Navi is locked into a private room. There are no windows, no means of seeing what's going on outside. there's no harm if he would go and get some of the stuff himself. What harm can there be? So he ran after the caravan, and Naaman turned suddenly and saw the servant of Elisha coming to him. He leaped off his horse, waited for him, and said, "Is there anything wrong? What can I do for you?" So Gehazi replied, "Nothing at all wrong. It's just that we have a couple of students who came in suddenly. We need some supplies for them. If I can get a little bit material for clothes, some silver." Naaman was overjoyed. He said, "Fine, here's 2 bushels full of silver and some material. In fact, take the whole thing if you want." And Gehazi said, "No, just this is fine. 2 sacks of silver materials, that'll do very well." Naaman said, "Well, let me at least send along my servants to carry it for you." He couldn't refuse that, so they carried it until he came to the door of his home. And there Gehazi took over, carried these little sacks, very silently tiptoed past the door of Elisha Hanavi, closed door. As he passed that door, he suddenly heard a voice, "Gehazi, come in." He dropped the loot, and he walked in very much very filled with fear that he had been caught despite the precautions he had taken. He walked in, stood before Elisha Navi. Elisha Navi asked him, "Gehazi, where have you been?" Gehazi replied, "Oh, just here and there." That was his reply. Elisha Navi said to him, "Don't you realize, don't you know me long enough to know that I saw? There are solid walls here, but I could see and I saw one certain one leap off his horse towards you and give you this tainted gift, a gift that's so stained because you knew it was against my wishes. You took this gift because you want silver to buy for yourself luxuries, to get for yourself servants. Well, this silver is yours. You can have the silver. But with the silver goes something else. With the silver goes death twice. Death twice means you must die here. You also must die in the future world. Death there means that a person goes to Gehenna and never goes to Gan Eden, Chas v'sholom. That's what your sentence is. Now, one thing, you cannot be saved from death here. That you must get, and it will not be a regular death. I'm simply going to transfer the leprosy that Naaman just dropped to you. So you will now have the silver with the leprosy that goes with it. As far as the other death is concerned, I'm going to transfer that so that your sons too, yes, you have 3 sons, your 3 sons too will have the same leprosy. Because it means that your sons will die, and one whose sons die, it is considered the same as a death penalty in itself. What is good about that, and why I'm giving it to you, he said, is because there's nothing worse than losing Elam Haba, losing the future life, the hereafter. Because you have served me in the past, the zechus of being Mishamish at tzadik is so great that will save your Gan Eden for you. So, in other words, you've lost life, the children will have leprosy too, but I have salvaged your Gan Eden for you. You will still have Gan Eden forever afterwards. And with this, that very next second, Gehazi walked out and as white as snow, head to foot, completely covered with leprosy. This is temporarily the end of the story with Naaman. We'll come back to the sequel to this very soon. First, meanwhile, we go on to a brief case of another miracle performed by Elisha Navi. As we said, we're recording the miracles of Elisha Navi. He was sitting together with his students, and suddenly the Talmudim student said to him, the room is very oppressive. There's very little room for us. We must have wider space. But the Gemara says, why suddenly did the students ask for more space? You want to answer that Gehazi was not as good as we might have thought. Gehazi was jealous. Gehazi had some evil traits. And so he forced students away from Elisha Hanavi. Because of him, the number had dwindled. Now, once Gehazi became a leper, he was forced to leave the camp, and so the gates were now open for new students to come, or for old ones who had left to come back, to return. So that many students now were added to the rosters of Elisha Hanavi. That's why there was a need for more space. They decided to build new huts, and so they went to the forest to cut down trees. Right at the water, the edge of the water, the Jordan, let these trees into the water, and let them float down, these logs, to a point where they would build the clearing. As they were cutting the trees down, each one using his own hatchet, one of the students of Elisha Navi cried out, my hatchet just slipped out of my hands, and fell into the river, and it sank to the bottom of the river. How can I continue working without a hatchet? Elisha Navi said to him, where is the spot? Exactly where did it sink? He showed him the spot. Elisha Navi took a piece of wood, a small piece of wood, and dropped it into the river exactly at that spot. Wood is a very light thing which can float. A hatchet is compact metal, iron or steel. And according to the physical rule of water displacement, steel cannot float. In this case, the miracle occurred where this piece of wood sank to the bottom, and the hatchet floated up to the top of the water. The student retrieved the hatchet and went about his work again. This was one of the miracles. The miracle means something which is supernatural, against the laws of nature. Now, we come to the next important case, where the king of Aram, this was later on, the king of Aram, in attacking the Jews, used some schemes where he would trick the Jews, lure them to a place where they'd be caught, a place of ambush. These were secret places. No one knew about this except the king himself and his closest aides. The king prepared an ambush where the Jewish king and his soldiers would go. They'd be caught there and massacred. But as the king had this ambush prepared, Elisha Navi sent notice to the king of the Jews, be careful not to go to this certain spot, because there is an ambush there. So, the king of the Jews was saved. The king of Aram was disappointed as to why this ambush failed. He tried a second time, a different place. Again, Elisha Navi sent warning to the king of the Jews not to go to the spot. Finally, the king of Aram became aware that something was wrong, and he said, there is definitely a spy among us. Someone is revealing our military secrets to the enemy. I want that spy found out, and I want that spy executed. the servants told the king of Aram, you forget, there's no spy among us. The spy is actually this Jewish prophet who sees from a distance. He can see what's going on, even as to what's going on inside your heart, even that which you don't reveal to anyone. The king of Rome said, in that case then, we must execute this prime enemy of ours. Let us send a band of soldiers to the city where this prophet is staying. What city is that? The city of Dason. And there, make sure that we get a good hitman to clear, once and for all, clear this main target, enemy of the people of Aram. So he sent an army to Dason. That city of Dason, of course, there were no defenders in that city. It's a very small town. Elisha Navi was there practically alone, together with his servant. The boy was with him, and there was no way to defend himself, especially when the king of Aram, who wanted to be certain that he would liquidate this prime target, sent not just a small band of soldiers, but a regular full-size army to Dason. Whole army against one person. As they came, the servant of Elisha Navi began to cry out in terror. He said, it seems there's an army of the Arabs coming towards us, and surely they're going to kill us. So Elisha Navi said to this boy, don't worry, because your eyesight is poor. What do you see? He said, I see an army of Arabs coming, fully equipped. He said, what do you see from our side? He said, I'm looking, I don't see anything. He said, look again. Then Elisha Navi cried out to Hashem and said, give this boy a better eyesight. Give him a 20/20 vision. The boy looked and said, wow, our army is bigger than theirs. We got a tremendous army here that's much larger than theirs. He said, no, you're not worried anymore? Good, then I'll keep quiet and wait till the enemy comes to us. The boy stood there calmly. He watched the enemy coming. He wasn't worried because he saw behind him big giant soldiers waiting to make contact with the enemy. This was all, of course, his own imagination, which showed the power of not hypnotism, of course. It's that we cannot use that word, it doesn't really exist. But an illusion, optical illusion, where only this boy would see that. Now, as the Arabs came in, the army of Aram came in, so Elisha Navi said another word, and they were all stricken blind. Every one of the soldiers was stricken blind. And he approached them and asked them, what are you looking for? And they said, we're looking for the Navi, Elisha. So he said, well, you came on the wrong road. Let me take you to the right road. He led them off from Dason to the city of Shemai. That was the capital city of the Jews, where the comparatively large Jewish army was. They brought them right to the king of the Jews. The king of the Jews saw them, Elisha Navi leading this army right into his own trap. The king said to Elisha Navi, my father. Father means like saying they use the word father, of course. That's the term he used because the rabbi is like a father, leader, head of. This time he spoke with respect. My father, he said, shall I strike them down, the enemy? Elisha Navi said, yes, you strike down the ones that you capture. The ones that you're victorious over, strike down, not the ones that I bring to you helpless. What you'll do is prepare a good, heavy meal for them. Treat them nicely as guests, and then send them back. Let them report what kind of a welcome they received, how cordial this was, and perhaps the king of Aharon will stop attacking. So the Jewish king did this, and they returned. This was, again, one of the miracles of Elisha Navi. Of course, what was special about this illusion, the part of this boy, a servant of his, was that what made this boy quiet, and strangely, the purpose for a miracle is not done in vain, but Elisha Navi had to have silence. This boy crying, terror, would have warned the soldiers as they were coming. For some reason he needed the silence. In order to quiet this boy, a special miracle was done. The boy could see a vast army behind them, but it wasn't an ordinary army. What he saw was coachmen, the horsemen, coaches, all of them are made of fire. Humans made of fire like angels. And when he saw these were on his side, these on our side, these fiery men, the boy, of course, was pacified. Now, the king of Aharon saw that it was futile to try to get to Elisha Navi, and so he let this thing pass. Sometime later, again the king of Aharon laid siege to the city of Shulchan. His name was Ben-Hadad. That's Aharon, of course, of the Syrians. It's a very common name today among the Syrians, Hadad, Ben-Hadad. Look in the phone book, you'll find Ben-Hadad. No relation, possibly, but this was the Syrian king. He was not Jewish at all. And he laid siege to Shulchan. Laying siege meant that he expected to destroy them simply by closing them off from the outside world, meaning they'd have no chance to purchase any food supplies. So, naturally, once the food supplies were consumed, they were used up, a famine broke out in the city of Shulchan. This famine became worse. Its hunger was multiplied each day until it became unbearable. Beginning, they would have no food to eat. They would have to take their horses, the mules, eat that. Eventually, it had to go much worse than that. It came to a point, we come to a story which we mentioned a few weeks ago, and again, to clarify, was mentioned by mistake. This took place at the time, years before. Actually, this is the time it really took place. At this moment, when Ben-Hadad laid siege to Shulchan, this is when the two women came before the king of the Jews, and he was standing on top of the wall of the city, bemoaning the fate of his people. These two came crying to him. One of them came crying for justice. They asked, "What do you want?" And she said, "I want help." He said, "You want help? You mean from this famine? If Hashem does not help you, how can I help you?" So she said, "You can, because I want justice. I want to sue my neighbor." We made a pact, an agreement, that the famine got so bad, we each have a son. We drew lots. We said that one day, one of us would slaughter our son. We'd both eat the flesh. On condition that the next day, the second one would slaughter her son. We divide that. Mine came out first. I kept my side of the pact. Now, she refuses to surrender her son. I want justice. I want her son surrendered and be killed just as mine was. The king heard this. He tore his clothes in anguish, and he swore Elisha Navi is going to lose his head today. He'll be beheaded today because this is all his fault. As much as the king was not God-fearing, as much as the king had spread idol worship, he still had enough respect for Elisha Navi, enough knowledge and faith to know that he was a prophet that possessed miracle powers. And so if he did not affect a Yeshua, a victory for the Jews. In the case of this famine, it was done deliberately. So he placed the blame for this famine at the door of Elisha Navi. So he sent a messenger to Elisha Navi, and with the instructions, kill Elisha Navi. A Jewish messenger sent by the Jewish king. This messenger came before Elisha Navi, and Elisha was sitting with his students in this, the elders inside this room. He told the elders, I can see, the Navi could see, of course, from far, I can see the king sending his messenger here to perform an act of murder, to kill me. Not only that, the king is walking right behind him. And when they come, let me handle this. Let the messenger through first and then close the door. The messenger came, and the messenger pleaded with Elisha Navi. He said, I know that you are holy, and I dread the thought of having murder on my record. I should be guilty of murdering a holy prophet. Please spare me that. So Elisha Navi said to the messenger, let me speak to your king better. He's right behind you. The king came in, and Elisha Navi said to the king, your problem is this famine, right? Well, my answer to your problem is that right now, for all the gold that the Jews possess, you cannot buy one spoonful of flour. Tomorrow, you'll be able to buy a giant bushel of flour for a small silver coin. The king always walked with a servant whom he leaned on. The servant is a close aide to the king. Usually these servants possess arrogance, known in Hebrew as chutzpah. The king remained silent, but the servant spoke up very derisively, mocking Elisha Navi. And he said to him, is Hashem going to create windows in heaven? You'll have this dropping out of these windows? Very mocking tone. Elisha Navi replied to the servant, well, you're going to see this happen tomorrow, but you're not going to partake of this at all. Miracle will take place tomorrow. You'll see it, but you'll have no pleasure from this miracle. That'll be your punishment for mocking me. So, shortly afterwards, Torah says that just after this was taking place, there were 4 men outside of the boundary of the Jews by law. These 4 men were 4 lepers, 4 men stricken with leprosy. They wore Gehazi and his 3 sons. By law, a leper is not allowed to enter within the confines of the Jewish camp. They must remain outside. And they said, there's no sense in going in to try to find food by the Jews. The army of Aharon is laying siege to the city. Let's see if we can sneak over to them and get something. What can we lose? If we lose our lives are worth nothing anyhow. We're starving to death. So they said, let's take this chance. They sneaked down towards the army of Aharon, and before they had gone there, Hashem performed a miracle to fulfill the words of Elisha Navi, and a panic overtook the army of Aharon. Panic was so great, they thought they were being attacked from all sides, that suddenly, filled with an overwhelming fear, they leaped up and ran. They left everything behind. There was food, cooking, prepared. They even left their horses. They ran by foot and left clothing, food, horses, everything they had, all their wealth behind. They just took off and ran. The entire area was strewn with garments. It was like bedlam. Now to this scene, these four men came. They looked into the first tent and they found that there were supplies there, no one there. They went further. Each place they went, they saw food. They didn't ask questions. They sat down and ate. Meal for the first time in so long a period. They came to the next tent, again food. They tried to eat again. At the third tent, as much as food was desirable, they had a limited capacity. So they said to each other, this is really a crime. Why should we gorge ourselves with this precious food? We have a chance now to deliver such important good news to the Jews. It's sinful that we hesitate even for a moment. Let's go back and report this to the Jews. So they came back. They called out to the guard at the top of the wall, tell the king that we came to the camp of Aharon, and everything is strewn about pell-mell. There's no sign of life. The king was told about this, and he said this might be a trap. So his advisor said, let's send just a few men there, take the risk, give them the couple of horses we have left. This is our last chance. They did this. The men came back quickly and reported that it is true. The army of Aharon had left. Apparently they panicked. What actually happened, of course, they panicked because somebody got the mental message that the Jews had hired Egypt to do battle against them. Now that's the way to destroy the Shoim. The Gemara says that the way to destroy the Shoim is to sow, to plant the seed of suspicion and mistrust among them. As long as there is no unity among the Shoim, it's automatically a victory for the tzaddikim and the Jews. To have Syria suspect that Egypt is going to attack it, this brings about this unity, and that's how meanwhile Israel enjoys victory. This is what happened here. So the king has sent the army down, and they try to hold back the people. So they brought all these supplies back, try to hold back the people from going into to get some of this food. So much is brought inside that suddenly the prices dropped till for a seller for a silver coin you can buy a whole bushel of wheat. King said there's a mad rush for this. We have to have a guard at the gates to the city. So he placed as a guard his trusty servant, the one he leaned on, the one who had mocked Elisha Navi the day before. As he stood there guarding the gates to the city, this crowd came surging forward, and he stood there alone. They bowled him over. He was trampled underfoot. He was crushed, killed, to fulfill the words of Elisha Navi. Because you dared to mock the Navi, therefore you will see this miracle with your eyes. You see the price go down, the availability of food to such extent, but you'll never have a chance to partake of any of it. This was the fulfillment of the prediction of Elisha Navi, and an additional case of the miracles performed by him. We come to the next brief case where Elisha Hanavi had told the Shunamis, the mother of the child we brought back to life, to go live outside of Israel during this famine. She went to among the enemies, land of the enemy. She stayed there for 7 years. At the end of the 7 years, she came back. During this time, her home and her land had been confiscated. When she came back, the problem was how to regain her home. So she had no recourse but to turn to the king himself, because by law, once she had been away for that period of time, it meant that she had actually surrendered legal ownership. So she decided to come to the king and plead with the king. At that moment, the king happened to be speaking to Gehazi. The king was talking to Gehazi about, he was intrigued about Gehazi's master Elisha Navi. He asked Gehazi, you served Elisha Navi for so long, tell me some of the miracles you saw him perform. He said, well, one of the greatest miracles was seeing Elisha Navi bring back to life a dead child. Amazing miracle. At that moment, this woman was coming in. So he said, in fact, there's the woman whose child he brought back to life. The king was so impressed with this timing that he asked her what she wanted, and she replied they had taken away a field. The king ordered one of his servants to immediately go take this woman, go back with her, and see that everything is returned to her to the last detail. And so she got her field back. One single item occurred, though, in this story, dealing with Gehazi, which we'll discuss in the next year. Very vital item, and it's one of the basic rules, one of the 4 basic rules that exist, known as the key to Gan Eden. We'll discuss that in the next year. Meanwhile, again, we are discussing now basically the powers of Elisha Navi, which mean the powers of the tzadik emes. We believe firmly that these powers were not listed to show only the greatness of Elisha Navi, but it shows, Arizal says, the power of tefillah. Because how did Elisha perform these miracles? Only with tefillah. Tefillah with tzadik emes is all powerful. Those who have emunah in tzadik emes are zechet to the schus of his tefillahs. Let us hope that with this emunah, and to add our tefillahs too, we zechet